Alrighty, so I will be going through my behavior over time graphs. So let's get right into it. To start off with the first one, we will be looking at a employment rate over time graph. The stock for this graph is the Alberta employment rate from 2016 2025. The x-axis marks the time of January of every year that it's listed from, and the y-axis is the employment rate in percentage. So before April of 2020, we can kind of see that from January 2016 to January 2020, that the numbers relatively stayed the same with a minor dip in 2017. And of course, prime COVID times, there was a major decrease in employment rate, especially with a lot of people being laid off and people having to work from home. They couldn't obviously go into work, and many companies were not in the position to be hiring. But as we go into 2021 and we start to get out of the COVID-19 virus and getting out more, we could kind of see that the levels of employment have relatively remained the same. And so to study this, you could say that in oncoming years, it most likely will stay the same between the 65, 64 to 67-ish type of weight. The outflow for this graph was an increase in inflation leads to a decrease in employment rate, because when inflation increases, when inflation decreases, that means buying products and paying for, company needs can become very pricey very quickly and can put a major strain on hiring new employees and even keeping current ones, just because everything is getting so expensive. And I got a lot of that information from a specific source. However, it was a graph, so I can't really quote it. But it is linked in my references. I believe it's the third or fourth link. But yes, that would be the outflow for this graph. Alrighty, moving on to the second one. For the second one, I do have two quotes, and they are on the second page of this PDF. And so I gotta scroll and read it, just because I don't have my second monitor with me because I am currently out of town. However, I am doing the best I can over here. So yeah, similar to the employment rate graph, on the x-axis we got our measurement of time from 2009 2023, and on the y-axis we got violent crime rate per 100,000 in Canada. And that would be our stock Canada crime rate 2009 2023. And as you can see, it was going down 2009 2014, starting to go back up. 2019 2020, it did take a minor dip, and it goes back up 2023. And the inflow of this one, an increase in negative environmental factors like poverty or housing arise, then crime rates tend to increase. And we could see that due to the decrease in 2020, people weren't getting out as much. They couldn't go out and commit crime because they were too scared to get the virus. However, in 2016, it would make sense. A lot of things tend to get pretty expensive. And to go to my quotes, according to the National Post written by Raheem Mohammed, critically, the report shows that violent crime was trending upward before the COVID-19 pandemic and has continued to rise in its aftermath. If anything, lockdown and other restrictions may have slowed down the trend of increasing violence. So pretty much that's why it dips down in 2020, due to people not being able to really go out. And to go along with this graph, according to the Canadian government, Stark developed a theory of deviant neighborhoods and proposes that there are 5 characteristics or essential factors that distinguish high crime areas: high population density, poverty, which is my wicked problem that I am discovering, mixed use of buildings for residential and commercial purposes, transience, and dilapidation. And that was said by the government in 2022. And the last graph I decided to discover from a wicked problem was the debt to GDP ratio in Canada, and that's in the stock for this one is Canada's household debt to GDP ratio from 2015 to 2024. So again, same type of outline. So the x-axis is the time and year, and the debt to GDP ratio, which is in percentage, on the y-axis. And I have two graphs on this one just to kind of show the beginning of each quarter and then the end. You could see they were pretty much relatively the same. In 2020, debt definitely took a big increase, especially when comparing it to the employment rate. Employment took a big dip in 2020, which means a lot of unemployment, and therefore a lot of people required reliance on things like credit and loans from a bank and borrowing money. And that pretty much leads to a cycle of debt, which is why so many people end up in poverty, because they take out credits and loans to help pay for living costs, yet it's very hard to break out of that cycle, which is why an inflow for this graph is an increased reliance on credit and increased living costs negatively contribute to household debt in Canada. And these three behavior over time graphs pretty much show how these are major role players for when it comes to poverty, and these graphs show the trends of how these major role players will most likely proceed to go, the direction they will proceed to go in the future, in my opinion. Because I'm not a professional at reading these or making these, but in my opinion, I do believe we will stay on the relative course of each one. I'm just going to zoom in on every one of these just so I'm going to get a closer look just so you can take a look. You can just pause. And then I'm just going to get a look at the reference page for you. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.